This Rise and Shine podcast series has been made possible by the generosity of the Zeidelman Family Foundation, which is committed to the unity and continuity of the Jewish people through meaningful and relevant Jewish education and wisdom.
The laws of keeping kosher are not some random thou shalts and thou shalt nots. They actually seek to maximize our human potential by also showing us that not everything on this planet is for us, not at all times, and not without thought.
This is Rise and Shine, a podcast that offers timeless wisdom and uplifting meditations to fill your heart, feed your soul, and start your day on a positive note. Here is Adrienne Gold Davis.
Jews and food. One of my favorite all-time Jewish jokes from the late comedian Jackie Mason went like this. A Jew goes to a restaurant that he doesn't care for, and afterwards he complains, the food, it was just terrible, and the portions were too small. What is it about Jews and food? Most Jewish holidays are laughingly referred to by many of us as they tried to kill us, we won, let's eat. But did you know that food is one of the most enduring themes of our Torah and that it is repeatedly used and referenced in, pardon my pun, portion after portion to help us learn great lessons of human nature? An article by Rabbi Ari Solish explains that just as we have a body and a soul, food does also. The body is what we see. The soul is the energy of the food, not just the physical energy it gives us. There's also a spiritual energy to all the food that's out there. And really the exploration is about not only the physical part of it, but the spiritual energy present in the food. So perhaps we are what we eat after all, but aside from the obvious dietary laws of kosher, not mixing milk and meat, the rejection of shellfish and pork and other forbidden foods, here are a list of examples where food becomes the vehicle, the message, and the meaning. The first is right at the start. We know that Adam and Eve are expelled from the Garden of Eden because of a forbidden fruit. They ate from that tree of knowledge of good and evil, and they internalized an admixture of confusion and frustration, and instead of having clarity about this world, it became obscured within them. So, no surprise then that in an echo of Adam and Eve's dilemma, we hear that expression, that forbidden fruit tastes sweeter. Forbidden fruit has come to represent our urges to partake of that which is not permitted to us, that which is not good for us, that which is unhealthy for us, and yet we're drawn after it. Such is the human condition post that original mistake. Then we learn about Cain killing his brother Abel because God favored Abel's food offering, a lovely little lamb, over his brother Cain, who brought the fruits of the soil. That's quickly followed by our patriarch Isaac favoring his son Esau because he did eat of his venison, it says in Genesis. His son, you see, was a hunter who fed his father richly versus his brother Jacob, who was more studious and less inclined towards hunting. And, of course, that leads to Jacob offering to give Esau a bowl of lentil stew when he came back from the field starving. Oh, but in exchange for his birthright. And we know that Esau agreed to this because Esau valued the instant gratification of a good meal over the less tangible spiritual birthright due to him since he was firstborn. We learn from that story the dangers of our urges for instant gratification over the ability of the emotionally intelligent to delay it. And this thousands of years before that famous marshmallow test. You can look it up. Ultimately, Jacob and his sons traveled to Egypt to buy grain because of a great famine in Canaan where they were living. The search for food was the precursor to our hundreds of years of slavery in Egypt. And then that brings us next to Joseph, who was interpreting the dreams of Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker while he was still imprisoned in Egypt. Now, you remember the Technicolor dream code, right? So later he saves Egypt from famine by solving Pharaoh's dream and having him store vast quantities of grain. Food storage saves the day. Joseph goes from the dungeon to the palace in the blink of an eye, all because he could analyze a dream that was about eating. When we finally left Egypt, we ran out in a hurry, and we took the unleavened bread dough, which had no time to rise, which is why we eat matzah at Passover time in commemoration. And then the manna that fell from heaven to feed the Hebrews in the desert after escaping Egypt could taste like anything you wanted to imagine it to taste like. It was a perfect food which, according to our sources, gave us full nutrition without any need of human waste. And it fell daily in accordance with our needs. And you couldn't hoard it or it would turn into worms. That's an early lesson in avoiding greed and in trusting that God will provide for our needs. And where were we headed? To the land of milk and honey, the Holy Land. At Hanukkah, we eat fried foods to remember the miracle of the oil. At Shavuot, we eat dairy products because we just received the laws of kashrut, and we had to prepare what we understood with vessels that were kosher. And let's not forget Rosh Hashanah, where the food has to be sweet, or the food baskets called mishloach manot that we give our friends at Purim. And of course, Yom Kippur features the absence of food. I could go on for hours this way, but this is enough to digest for now. We live in a time of compulsive behaviors around food and eating. The plethora of diets and restrictions for food, the diseases they can cause, and the perception, to quote the late Wallace Simpson, that a woman can neither be too rich nor too thin, reinforces this preoccupation as been part of an ushering in of an era that's created its own obsessions with what you will ingest and what you will not. In Jewish thought, the soul of food is imbued with energy that can either be good nutrition for your soul and body or not. The laws of keeping kosher are not some random thou shalts and thou shalt nots. They actually seek to maximize our human potential by also showing us that not everything on this planet is for us, not at all times, and not without thought. This is why the blessings before and after we eat help us elevate the act of eating from beyond the animal into the spiritual. It is a diet for your soul, not a diet for your thighs. This week, as you make your menus and you shop for your groceries, as you dine out or dine in, host meals, or provide them for the needy, let's treat food with the reverence and significance and the gratitude it is owed. Let's be mindful of our spiritual nutrition as much as our physical nutrition. Let's give thanks not just when food is given to us in our hungry state, but afterwards, when we are sated. There's a beautiful idea that since our temple was destroyed, our dining room tables have become the altars of our homes. May they be filled with everything we need, and may we ensure that no one goes hungry. B'tei Avon.
Thanks for listening to Rise and Shine. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to Momentum Podcasts on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Join Adrienne again next time for more timeless wisdom and uplifting meditations that fill your heart, feed your soul, and start your day on a positive note.
This podcast was sponsored by the Zeidelman Family Foundation. Spread the wisdom. Inspire Jewish individuals around the globe by supporting Momentum's podcasts. To sponsor, contact podcast@momentumunlimited.org. You're listening to a Momentum podcast. For unlimited inspiration, wisdom, and empowerment, visit momentumunlimited.org.